Marielle Segarra, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. Before we dive into your principal takeaways from covering health and wellness for many, many years, I'd be curious to hear a little bit of your backstory. How and why did you get interested in this stuff in the first place? I had a cocaine-fueled panic attack on live television, so I have a pretty clear trajectory narratively between my old life and my new life. But I'd be curious, it doesn't have to be as ridiculous as mine, but I'd be curious to hear about your trajectory.
Specifically around meditation and mindfulness?
Or just getting to the position you're in now where you're hosting this show that is all about health and wellness.
I guess I have two answers for that. There's the personal and the professional. I feel like they married really well here, because this feels like the show that I should be hosting, that I'm supposed to be hosting, but I wouldn't have known that it existed before it existed. Like, I wouldn't have pitched it necessarily. Life Kit existed for years before I started, and then they decided to hire a full-time host. And at the time, I was a financial reporter at Marketplace, the public radio outlet. And I covered finance and economics for a number of years, a lot of news coverage, and then a lot of consumer psychology. So I think I know that was attractive to them when they were hiring me, but I think the thing that really connected for my boss when we had one of our initial calls, I was actually talking to her about, I had applied for a different host job at NPR, and it was kind of like a screening call. And I mentioned that I was gathering a lot of my ancestors' stuff, like anything I could find that belonged to them, like a little prayer book that was my grandmother's, and then a little address book that was my abuela's, and different little things, and also items to represent them, basically creating like an ancestral altar on my bedside table, that I was having this kind of spiritual journey that way. And I just happened to mention that to her, and she was like, that would be a great Life Kit episode. Did you know we're hiring for Life Kit? Like, you could consider applying for that. And yeah, I did. And it made so much sense once I connected to what Life Kit does. I was like, oh, I am this person. Like, I'm the person who likes to be really practical about whatever I'm dealing with in my life. Like, we did an episode the other day on car safety, and I was like, oh, every time I drive over a bridge, I have that intrusive thought of if I'm going to end up in the water, what would I do? And then what would be the next step? And then so I was like, can we do an episode on this? Can we just find out what actually I'm supposed to do? That'll make me feel better. So there's that. And then there's like, I like to, when people tell me their problems, I want to try to help them and give them like specific practical advice. That's not always wanted in real life. But I find that when you do, like at Life Kit, people are seeking it. So
Yes.
It's a good outlet for that impulse of mine where I want to try to fix people's problems.
My friend Gretchen Rubin calls herself a happiness bully. And she can pull it off, but most of us can't. Most people don't want unsolicited advice. But if you're hosting a show and people are clicking on it, then it's very much solicited. All right. So this conversation is part of the series that we do on our show about how to get fit sanely, and I know that overlaps with so many of the themes that you cover on Life Kit. So we're going to talk about your top 10 takeaways, like stuff that you personally are using from all of the things you've learned about various aspects of fitness, including exercise and sleep and even play, which I think is an undervalued part of fitness and mental health generally. So if you're cool, I thought we'd start with exercise, and I'll chime in throughout, like with shit from my own, like stuff I've learned in my own life. But your number one takeaway after having covered exercise for a while is to incorporate small pockets of exercise throughout the day. What does that look like?
Yeah, for me, sometimes it looks like doing calf raises when I brush my teeth. Or a lot of it happens when I'm watching TV. If I'm watching, I recently binged Severance, went back to rewatch season 1 and then watch season 2. And I do a lot of because I've been to physical therapy over the last year or so for some stuff. And I do a lot of the exercises they give me during that, even stuff like you're sitting on the floor. It's a shoulder stretch. It's like I'm sitting back on against my couch and just kind of stretching my arms out like that. But it's a simple thing. Also, like lunges, squats, anything like that that's stationary, or I have an exercise bike that faces the TV. So these are all very helpful. But you could also do it like if you have kids and you're waiting in the pickup line to get your kids, you could, you know, take that moment and pair it with movement. If you're parked and it's everybody's just waiting, you get out of the car and you do a couple squats. Or, you reach up and move your body in a different way than you've been moving it all day. The reason for that is like you want to pair movement with some activity that you're already doing routinely, because that'll help you remember to do it. And it's time that's already accounted for. Like we brush our teeth every day, ideally. And so if you do that, or you do it when you're taking your pills, or you do it when you're making your smoothie, then you find a way to work it in and you don't have as many excuses like, oh, I just can't make time for a whole hour to go to the gym or whatever.
Is the idea there that you'll start seeing benefits and then want to go to the gym, or is this just as good as going to the gym?
It's not necessarily the former. Like you can still get a lot of benefits from breaking up movement into these exercise snacks, is what some people call them, throughout the day. You can still get the benefits, for instance, of strength training or cardio, as long as you're getting your heart rate up for cardio to like the target zone, which you can achieve even by walking. It's okay to break it up. You don't have to do it all at once. So you don't have to have the gym that you go to, unless you like that, which I do not. I find gyms depressing a lot of the time, unless it's the rock climbing gym, because then it's like a fun little puzzle. But the lighting in gyms, usually, the smell, just like all the clanking of weights and things, like I hate it. I won't go.
This is like, I'm sure for many people who feel the same way you do, either because they hate gyms or because they can't find the time to go, to know that you can just weave it into your life as it is liberating.
I think it's a relief for a lot of people that they don't have to work out in the way that they were told they have to work out. And that also exercise can be fun, and you can find the way that works for you at this moment. Like you might be really into biking around your neighborhood or something, or biking on the road right now, and then you decide, not so much anymore. Now I want to, start jogging or start swimming or something. And like, it's also okay to just change it up as you get bored of one thing, or what suits your needs. Like I like to, lately, especially as the weather has gotten nicer, I'm like, oh, let me start biking again to get places in Brooklyn. Then I don't have to take the subway, and I also get some exercise in.
I've been doing that with walking, taking meetings. If I've got a meeting that would have otherwise been a Zoom, but I can make it a phone call, I can just walk through my neighborhood, or instead of taking a cab, to actually like just carve out a little extra time and go to a place, walk to a place. I found that to be really helpful.
I think if you take meetings when you're walking too, like it can foster creativity. It can help you come up with better ideas. I have definitely felt stuck before on a story that I was working on, and then I go for a walk and I talk to my editor or a producer or someone, and I'm able to think outside of the box that my apartment creates. When you're looking at the same things all the time, I don't know, it's like your brain doesn't go there. But then you're suddenly among the trees in the park or whatever, and you're newly inspired.
There's an evolutionary case for this. I'm not an expert in this. I'm repeating things I've heard from experts, but
yeah.
We evolved to think while moving through nature. And that makes a ton of sense, because we were hunting and gathering, migrating, lots of things on the go. Deep in our molecules, there's a there's a good reason why taking a walk can not only be good for your physical fitness, but also for your creativity and larger mental health.
I love that. Yeah, I think it can also be really helpful to try when you're doing this to know you might get these benefits, but to let go of outcomes. So it's like I'm pretty sure if I go for a walk, it's going to shake me loose a little bit, but I don't necessarily know in what direction or towards what like productive outcome. And sometimes it'll just be the joy of that experience, the joy of being in the park and seeing a little kid on their bike, like learning how to bike with their parent, or, you know, a cute dog that I smile at. Or I was on the beach in Puerto Rico last week and I just watched a little crab dig a hole for 20 minutes. And he had his little claw and he would go and scoop up the sand and then come out of the hole, dump the sand, come back in. He had these like really cute eyes, you know, like a cartoon character. As I got closer to him, he got a little more wary of me, like, is this girl gonna eat me? And I was like, no, 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 it's okay. I just want to take a picture. Um, so he started dumping the sand like real quick and then running back in. But I was like, I loved it. Like it was one of the best moments of my trip. Just sitting there and watching this crab do his thing over and over. And then I was also like, oh, there's metaphor here for my own life, which is something we learned when we did the forest bathing episode. You can find metaphor in nature for pretty much anything you're going through. You know, like whether it's the way that trees, when they die and they fall, they decompose and they become, you know, part of the forest floor, and they become a different part of the ecosystem, right? Where mushrooms can grow and maybe like little birds can live in there. It can be a metaphor for death and grief. I find there's just a lot of wisdom in nature when you sit and watch. And so you could go for that walk and say like, okay, like this is going to help me think about the next chapter of my book or whatever, or this is going to help me come up with my business plan. Or you could go into it with a little less attachment to the outcome and just see.
I love that. And my meditation teacher, Joseph Goldstein, often says that meditation actually can be a good way to problem solve, but not in an obvious way. You're not supposed to sit down and think about the problem, because that's normally what we do. Instead, you can seed your mind with the problem and then go into a mindful state where you're just watching your breath or noticing whatever's coming up in your body and mind. And then when you get distracted, you start again and again. And when you let the unconscious mind go to work in this way, connections that you might not have been able to make with your everyday discursive mind can get made. And, you know, this is why we get ideas in the shower.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I see a lot of resonance there.
You can work with your dream self, your sleeping self, to do the same thing. We did an episode about dreaming, and we interviewed a researcher at Harvard about this, and she has studied dreaming for a long time. And she would have her students, basically, there was some problem they were working through with a project, and they would I think it was that they would think about it right before bed, or they would ask, it was like one question they would ask themselves, not like poring over it before bed, but I believe it was like they would ask themselves, okay, how might I approach this? Or like, what should I do about X or whatever right before bed? And it would, in a lot of cases, they would end up eventually dreaming about it and coming to some sort of solution that might show up in the form of a metaphor or like visual imagery, but our sleeping minds are really good at that. And they're kind of amazing. Like if you remember your dreams, I'm sometimes like, wow, my brain is so creative, the way it's showing me this problem in my life, but just in a different way through a movie that it's creating, this vivid movie. And it's showing me that, oh, what I'm feeling about this thing is guilt. I dreamt that I had drawn tic-tac-toe boards like on a public wall. For some reason, I was like bored waiting in a train station or something. And then I got arrested and I was going to be sent to prison for like 10 years. And I was in and I had drawn this in pencil, Like it was not a high crime, but I was in the courtroom and it was like, you need to like apologize for what you've done. And they were like talking about how I was so unrepentant. And like, I was like, ugh, like I woke up, I was like, I'm going to be sentenced. But I didn't even know what I'd done wrong. And I woke up and I was like, oh, the guilt is heavy. Like, what am I feeling guilty about? And I realized it was someone that I was seeing at the time who kind of used guilt like as a manipulative tactic. But I didn't really recognize this about him consciously. I was like a new person I was seeing. But then after I had that dream, I was like, oh, this is the state that I'm living in. Like I'm feeling guilty all the time. I don't like this. I don't want to see this person anymore.
Hoping my wife doesn't have inconvenient dreams from me anytime soon.
I mean, I do think your dreams can help you work through whatever. It doesn't mean you have to end relationships, but it can help you understand something that you're dealing with day to day. That you're like, ooh, what does that symbol represent to me? There's a lion in your dream. Okay, what do lions mean to me? What does that represent? And what were they doing in the dream? And like that's what we talked about to that researcher about.
We've gone a little bit far afield, but in a great way. I'm going to bring us back, but not with any kind of feeling about it. Number 2 in your list of 3 exercise tips that you, as the host of Life Kit, have actually incorporated into your own life. And number 2 is bundling your temptations with your exercise. Or sometimes researchers call this temptation bundling, but say more if you will.
Yeah, this is sort of what I was talking about before with the workout while you're watching TV. TV is a good example because a lot of us have shows that we really like and they might come in bite-sized chunks. So I really love the show Abbott Elementary. I think it's like half an hour. You could save that and only watch it when you're working out. So I could say, I'm going to just only watch Abbott Elementary when I'm on my exercise bike. And and then that's like 20 something minutes on the bike. And that way you're telling yourself, I'm going to get a treat when I do this other thing that's also good for me. So that's an idea that Katie Milkman at Wharton, she's a behavioral scientist, she shared with us. This idea of temptation bundling. The idea is like you will start craving trips to the gym or you'll start craving a bout on the exercise bike if you know that it's paired with, for instance, your favorite show.
Yeah. Katie's amazing. She's been on this show. I'll drop a link to that in the show notes and also a link to your conversation with her as well. So temptation bundling, a lot of evidence behind that. And the third tip that you've incorporated into your own life, I think is maybe based on my understanding of the science of behavior change, among, if not the most powerful, and that is finding an exercise accountability buddy or buddies, plural.
Yeah. And people have been doing this forever. My mom and our neighbor would go for walks around the neighborhood. And it's basically like when you say to a friend, the simple version is, hey, we both want to start walking around. We both want to be more active. Let's meet up once a week. Let's meet up every morning, whatever the cadence is. And because you know that this other person is relying on you, you're less likely to flake on it than you would be to flake on yourself. And a lot of us are people pleasers. So we need that impetus to please another person to actually meet our own goals, or in this case, health goals. I think there are lots of ways of doing this. You don't necessarily have to do it with just one person and do exactly the same thing. I like the idea of parallel play in a way, but like doing slightly different things. You can be, you could be on your exercise bike while your friend is doing yoga, in the same living room. Or you could both do your own exercise and then just say, we're going to meet up for a coffee after. And this will be like before work or something that works for you. I would never do that because I'm not a morning person. So I might be like a post-work kind of situation. But it can work really well for exercise. It also works for other pursuits, like creative pursuits. And we can get into that. I know that's an area of interest too, just like pursuing fun and joy and play. But like I went to a woodworking group last night where we meet up once a month. We make wooden spoons. Like, I say I'm new to this, my second time, but I really liked it, and I was working away on my spoon, and it's that idea of, like, I'm not gonna work on the spoon the rest of the month. I'm just gonna go this one for a couple hours, and we're gonna do the spoons together, you know?
Is there anything more Brooklyn than that?
No, probably a lot of what I say is gonna sound very, very Brooklyn, yeah. And then we have a drum circle in the park, and no, it's kind of great though. Like people are really nice, and like I feel like you meet like-minded folks, and I'm just like, and someone will stop you if you're using the knife the wrong way. Someone will be like, no, don't do that. You're gonna cut your finger off. You know, like it's not a class, but it's a community, which I love. And I don't think the goal is not like, oh, I need to make this many spoons, you know? It's not anybody's job. It's more just like, I want to learn this skill. I want to work with my hands. I think that feels good. Again, gets me thinking in a different way.
Yeah. No, I buy it. I'm smiling just because I used to have a colleague back when I had a meditation app. My colleague Eva once unironically told me that, made a reference to the fact that she was in an artisanal yogurt listserv, and I was like, there's nothing more.
Okay, that is over the top. Well, maybe the spoon making club is also kind of ridiculous.
I don't know. Maybe it's a notch below the artisanal yogurt. Having said that, though, there's something deep here around the power not only of having accountability buddies while you're doing exercise, but just to connecting to other humans, in pretty much any context, as long as it's voluntary, can be incredibly powerful. I don't have trouble getting to the gym. I actually like it. I'm a bit of a mutant in that way. And I have been recently doing some group workouts on the weekends, and there's something incredibly, it's so much more fun to do it with other people. And it's the same vibe where my form is often bad. And so like the other people in the room are helping me with my form. And so that's really helpful. Let's talk about another area of fitness that I think, often when we talk about fitness, people go right to exercise or food, but sleep, I've often referred to as the apex predator of healthy habits. Like nothing can happen if you're not sleeping. So you very kindly let me know in advance about the 3 sleep tips that you've heard about in the course of hosting your show that you've actually incorporated into your own life. And one of them is, and I'd be curious to hear you explain this, find your sleep sweet spot in 15-minute increments. What does that mean?
Yeah, sleep sweet spot is very hard to say. I'm impressed that you got that out.
30 years of being an anchorman.
We talked to Rebecca Robbins. She's a sleep scientist at Brigham and Women's Hospital. And she was saying basically you want to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep in a night. That is the ideal range. A lot of people will say that they can do with less, but often they're taking naps throughout the day or they're reaching for a lot of coffee. That would probably give me heart palpitations.
First of all, my dad worked at Brigham and Women's for about 30 years as the head of radiation oncology, so I'm quite familiar with Brigham and Women's Hospital.
Oh, wow. It's an intense job.
Yeah.
Radiation oncology.
Yes, it was. This idea of going to bed early or earlier is a thorny one, and actually connects to another of your takeaways. It is really something I see in my own life, too. There's this concept, this is one of my favorite terms, revenge nighttime procrastination. Or revenge bedtime procrastination. And I just last night, in fact, I got home from dinner. I went out to dinner with some friends, and I got home at 10. And I have learned recently, actually, that that 10 is actually the right time for me to start my sleep routine. But I didn't. You
get in your footy pajamas and you're
exactly at my footy pajamas and my chamomile tea. No, actually, my bedtime routine is walking meditation, and because my big sleep obstacle really is like a restlessness, and so if I can do like a amble around the house for 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes before bed, while I'm trying to be mindful, it really gets my body ready to go to sleep, and then I read a little bit. But I've found that if I push it too late, it screws me up. And so last night, that's exactly what I did. I pushed it too late, and I had trouble sleeping. This I think is a very common issue, and it's on your list of things you've learned. So what have you learned about revenge, nighttime procrastination, and how to deal with it?
Well, okay, I'm wondering, what did you do when you got home what did you want to do?
Oh, I
Because
watch
this
TV.
is what you watch TV. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think revenge bedtime procrastination is really about, you go all day, you're maybe being very productive, whatever it is. You have to, like, you go to work, you get this done, you get your errands done, you drop your kids off at school. And then maybe you socialize and that's important to you too. Or you go to the gym and that's important to you too. But then you get home and you want some quiet time, or you want some creative time, or you want some time with your partner, and you can't squeeze it all into one day. And so you're like, but I don't want the productive stuff to be my whole life, like my whole day. It can't have my whole day. And so you try to carve out this extra time, and you're like, I can steal from sleep me. Like, that's because that's really what it is. You're like stealing from your sleeping self, and you're stealing from yourself tomorrow. But you're sort of like, I need to do this right now. I feel. And sometimes it can be bad if you're like, what I need to do, you can get into a pit because you're like, I want to feel creative or something, but you don't have a creative project you're really working on. So instead you go online and you start online browsing and shopping. And that's like fake creativity. It's just giving you a little bit of like a buzz. It's giving you a feeling that you're doing the thing that you seek, but you actually are not. And you might end up just buying something. Then you look up and it's midnight, or it's 12:30 or something like that, or 1 a.m. That's also really common among people who like have high stress jobs. And they're like, I need that break. If you are going to do those things, like if you do want to stay up and be browsing or whatever, you should not do it in bed. You should make your bedroom a space that you can actually relax, and a space that's just for sleeping. And I would say, like, to be reasonable, also for sex. I mean, that's what most people do in their beds, and that's like a healthy thing. Anything that you want to do if you are stressed out at night, you can get up from your bed and do the thing, or like write a note to yourself, but don't do it while you're in your bed.
We've had experts on the show talk about this, and it seems like it just comes down to teaching your brain that the bed is a place to sleep. And if you're teaching it that it's for anything else, I was having a conversation the other day with a therapist for my own stuff. I've been suffering with claustrophobia, and she in the process of the conversation said our brains are really dumb. And it will panic, even though you rationally know there's nothing to fear. And the same, I think, applies to a certain extent with sleep. If you're training the brain that, oh yeah, this is a place where I shop on my laptop, then you're in a state that's not congenial necessarily to sleep.
Have you talked about the claustrophobia thing on the show?
Yes, I have. Although I'm in a whole new realm because I've been dealing with this for about 3 years now, and I'm now kicking it up a notch and getting serious about it because my family is getting very tired of me needing to take Klonopin to get on a plane because it makes me annoying in the moment and grumpy later when I'm hungover.
I've had some experiences with claustrophobia too, so I'd be curious to listen to if you do any episodes that are specific to it. I think it's a not uncommon phobia. For me, it's like I got locked in bathrooms a couple times, and so now I'm like, public bathrooms, I'm like terrified to lock the door unless it's a lock mechanism that I can like see and know that
I completely relate to that.
Nightmare fuel.
All right, well let's go back to
but
sleep.
I know what you mean. That's what I was gonna say. Like, I know what you're talking about, where your brain is like, okay, but I'm fine. Like, someone is going to come and eventually, and they will, be able to get the door open. But I'm like, I'm gonna die in here.
The dumb brain of ours, it's an amazing, it's not dumb, but in this way, it can be kind of dumb. And it needs to be trained like in very kind of obvious ways. And so if you're teaching it that the bed is a place to get activated or acquisitive or inquisitive or productive, it's gonna, for many of us, it will make sleep harder.
Yeah. Another thing, by the way, that we learned was that it's very important to keep your bedroom at a cool temperature. I like to
Yes.
sleep a little more on the warm side, but
Huh.
Robbins was telling me, you want to make sure it's under 70 degrees, ideally. Like even in the winter when you're trying to be all cozy, under your sheets, um, because they have done studies on this and they have data to show that when they increase the temperature from that people's sleep was more fragmented. So they were tossing and turning more. They were more disrupted. They were having more
Hmm.
nightmares. So that's another thing we can do to set ourselves up to be successful is like keep it cool in your bedroom.
That was the third, just to flag for folks, that was the third tip for sleep, that you've found to be helpful in your own life, keeping it cool in the room. And I was interested to hear that you're a warm sleeper, because I use air conditioning in the winter to keep the room cold. I have a lot of trouble sleeping unless the room is pretty frigid.
I will say this has been a roller coaster over the past year because I did treatment for breast cancer and
Oh.
went through chemo and had hot flashes, like really terrible hot flashes. So I dealt with that for a long time and that's shifted now. But I was like, so then I was all about the air conditioner in the winter. But I was like, this is no problem for me. I don't even need the heat on. Um, but my base level, yeah, I feel like my hands and feet get cold and I just want to be tucked up.
Now I understand why you reacted the way you did to my saying the thing about my dad being a radiation oncologist. He was actually a specialist in breast cancer, before he retired. So I'm sorry to
Oh,
hear that
well.
you went through that. Are you doing all right now?
Yeah, I am doing as well as I possibly could be. So my scans have been clear, basically since surgery. But they did all the other things as a just in case, you know. That's how complicated it is with cancer. It's like they don't know for sure that like a little bit of it didn't get out and like a little micrometastases could be like somewhere in your body. And so that's why they did chemo. That's why I had to do chemo and that's why they do radiation. Um but yeah, I get checked regularly. It's hard to know what to say because people who haven't gone through cancer or like haven't maybe had a family member go through it, they ask, "Oh, are you in remission or are you cancer free?" And it's like a little hard to answer those questions. Like as far as I know, I feel good. I feel healthy. Um, it's just one of those things that is kind of gonna be with you. It's
Mm.
just gonna be a thing that you have to be careful about. And I was already interested in living a healthy life, but now I also know what a big role these kinds of practices play in preventing a recurrence of breast cancer, specifically because breast cancer is hormone mediated. And so it can play like sleep plays a big role. What you eat plays a big role. And also exercise does, in terms of like, there have been studies that show it can decrease the risk of a recurrence significantly,
Mm.
um, if women exercise regularly, like get like the recommended amount that the government recommends every week. And so seeing those numbers, I was like, okay, I really need to be consistent about this. This is going to help me maybe as much as taking this pill is helping me.
Yeah, motivation to get even more serious about the things we've been talking about, but also perhaps even an enhanced and broadened perspective on the whole business of being alive.
I definitely don't take it for granted. I
Mm.
never did. I lost a few family members when I was pretty young. An aunt and an uncle who both died young. My uncle was, I think he was like 52, died from a heart attack. And my aunt, my Thea, she died from colon cancer in her 50s. And I was like under 10 years old, very close to both of them. And so I think I always had this idea that that can happen, when you're pretty young. And I've always lived in a way that's very like seize the day kind of, like nothing is promised. And I was always pretty careful. That's the thing. Like a lot of people who get cancer young are like, wait, I did all the right things. I thought I was doing all the right things, And then you realize there are more things you could do. And there's more like ways to avoid environmental toxins or try to. But there's this feeling of like, maybe I've realized that you can do all the right things and bad things can still happen. People were asking me if I was feeling like, why me? Why did this happen to me? And I was like, not really, because it's a little like, why not me? I think it's 1 in 2 people get cancer in their lifetimes and 1 in 8 women get breast cancer. So I was like, well, those aren't like great odds, It has to happen to somebody. But if it's why not me that this could happen, then also why not me could have, like, why can't I have amazing experiences after I'm done with treatment? Why not me? Like, oh, I want to go, I just want to have like a beautiful, brilliant life. I want to still be able to have a kid. I want to, like find the partner who's the right fit for me. I want to have like a great community and learn how to carve wooden spoons on Monday nights in Brooklyn. Like, why not me? I think flipping that has helped me.
I could get you into an artisanal yogurt listserv if you want.
I'm lactose intolerant, so I can't take you up on that.
Got it.
But
I'm sure they have vegan variants, knowing this.
Yeah.
This crew.
Okay.
I'm curious because when my team went to you and said, hey, we'd love to have you on, talk about fitness. What have you learned? You came back with 3 things that have really hit home for you on the exercise front and 3 things that have really hit home for you on the sleep front. And then instead of talking about diet or something sort of obvious on the nose when it comes to fitness, you wanted to talk about play. Why play, and how does that link to fitness in your view?
Yeah, we've done some episodes on this, and they confirmed what I think I felt intuitively, which is that play is a basic human need. We interviewed someone named Stuart Brown, who's been studying play for his entire career. And he talks about, first of all, that like humans aren't the only animals that play. Bears, leopards, bison, ravens, dolphins, and from an evolutionary perspective, it might not seem to make sense at first, like, because it could be risky, it could be costly, like, why do we do this thing? But animal play scholars and biologists argue that it actually serves an important role. It can help us adapt to difficult circumstances. It can help us practice skills we need to survive and help us problem solve and collaborate. And there are studies on this, mostly there are some in animals, and I think it might be a little harder to study play in adult humans and see the outcomes. But just based on the data that they have, they believe that play plays a really important role in our lives. And then I think we can also feel this when we do it, and we just like kind of intuitively see the benefits of it. So play, I think, can be lots of different things, though. It's not necessarily like, let's go fly a kite or, like games that hopscotch or things that you did as a kid on the playground, though, if you're into that, like, cool. A lot of it is about creativity. A lot of it is about storytelling. I find my play through fashion, through nature. Like I was saying, I like to watch the little hermit crab digging a hole. And I find that playful. Like almost like talking to the hermit crab. That's an element of play. Or even sometimes you can be playful with yourself. Like you're in the kitchen and you do something stupid. Like I have this like water filter that takes a long time. It's a reverse osmosis filter. It takes a long time to like fill up my jug of water. So I'll just like leave it going. And then on the countertop as the thing is filtering, and I forgot about it. every other time. I forget and it starts flooding. Like it starts flooding the countertop and then onto the floor. And I'm like, oh my God, like you did it again. Like instead of being like, oh, like I'm so stupid. Like sometimes I'm just kind of laugh at myself like I'm my own bad roommate, you know? Like you can just sort of be like, oh, you goon. Like and sort of like have a moment of play with yourself, you know? Or you could do it with a little bird that lands on your windowsill. You find these moments throughout your day, just like we talked about with exercise snacks.
It's not just a practice, it's an orientation to life. I like that.
Yeah.
One of the things that you talk about is that for many of us, like, we don't even know where to start. You know, we hear that play is good for us, and then we look at our lives and we're like, yeah, well, I can't see I haven't thought about this in a long time. I don't see how to fit it in, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the experts on your show advised that if you want to get a sense of like what your play style is, interpolate back to your childhood and what were the things you enjoyed doing then. Can you say more about that?
Stuart Brown worked as a psychiatrist for many years, and he would ask patients about their early experiences with play. He and his colleagues would review the notes, and they noticed certain types, and they came up with basically a list of play personalities. I think there are 8 of them, and you can be more than one of these, but maybe, you know, you see kind of where your clusters are. You might be the joker who loves to laugh and make other people laugh. Practical jokes, physical comedy, wordplay, like could be a lot of things. You might be the artist creator, which resonates for me. You might be the kinesthete who finds joy in movement. So like swimming, running, stretching, whatever it is, archery. There's the director who loves to call the shots and to plan parties, stuff like that. There's the storyteller, which I also resonates with me, maybe obviously, and for a lot of journalists. So you can kind of see, you could refer to his list, Stuart Brown's list, to see which of those personalities resonate for you. Or maybe you'll come up with a category of your own.
When I was preparing for this interview and I was thinking about, you know, how much play do I have in my life? I mean, I do play the drums, but not as much as I would like. I do exercise a lot, but it doesn't feel super playful unless I'm doing it with other people. And then I was thinking about socializing. I really like to see my friends, and so several nights a week. I probably could do it every night, honestly. We'll go to dinner with friends. I really, really like that. And so I'm like, I did it last night. I'm doing it again tonight. And that seems to incorporate both storytelling and joking for me in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, does that make sense to you?
I think your dinners could be playful or they could not be, depending on what's going on at them. I think we've all been to dinners that feel more like a funeral. And then we've been to dinners that feel super playful and have those elements. So if it's good vibes, if you're, you know, if you can joke around with your friends and lean into that, or like some people, I went to a dinner party recently and we did Esther Perel's game.
Yeah.
I think it's called Where Should We Begin? And it has the prompts on it. And that led to some really playful conversations. Some people like to get together with their friends and literally play games like board games and things, which I do not like. I don't need to learn new rules to anything ever again.
I don't like it either.
I really like, I'm going to want to do this really well. And you've been practicing this because you own this game. You've been practicing this thing at your house for years with every person who comes through, and there's no chance I'm ever going to win. So we're not playing this. Maybe we could play Candyland, but we're not playing like a strategy game. Besides the point. But, you know, but I guess it is to the point where it's like you're doing, you learn what you like and what you don't like. You learn what feels like play to you. And it's going to be different for every person. And yes, you can go back to childhood and think about what felt like play then, because sometimes that's like a more pure vision of ourselves, or it's like when we had less maybe distracting us and we just kind of gravitated towards what we liked. I'm curious for you as a kid, like what were your favorite forms of play?
Music. I my parents were really into what we would now call classic rock, although at that time I don't think they called it classic rock. So just current rock then, you know, the Beatles, the Stones, Creedence Clearwater. I was born in 1971. The band. And so that definitely scaled up to me learning the drums as a kid, and still, my son who's 10 plays the drums, and so there's that. Definitely joking around, storytelling. I keyed in on the thing you mentioned before about like being on the swing and then jumping off. I think there's something, I don't do enough of this, but there's something about that we feeling,
Yeah.
that, uh, biking, skiing, rollerblading, skateboarding all have that to them.
Yeah.
And I can see it a little bit. Yeah, I was on a beach vacation with my son recently where we were boogie boarding. So that kind of that sensation is, I think, really powerful.
As I was thinking about this morning, I remembered a C.S. Lewis quote that I wrote out and had taped on my bedroom wall when I was in high school. You may have noticed that the books you really love are bound together by a secret thread. You know very well what is the common quality that makes you love them, though you cannot put it into words. But most of your friends don't see it at all and often wonder why liking this, you should also like that. And I'm like kind of fast forwarding here. Even in your hobbies, has there not always been some secret attraction of something not to be identified with, but always on the verge of breaking through? The smell of cut wood in the workshop or the clap clap of water against the boat's side. Are not all lifelong friendships born at the moment when at last you meet another human being who has some inkling, but faint and uncertain, even in the best, of that something which you were born desiring, and which, beneath the flux of other desires and in the momentary silences between the louder passions, night and day, year by year, from childhood to old age, you are looking for, watching for, listening for?
Hmm. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
There's
for me
something,
it would be
yeah,
something around humor.
humor. And the we, I love the we thing. Like that is a
Yeah, the we
common,
thing too.
that's a
Yeah.
common thread. And you can think about what else might get you there. Is it a physical thing like roller coasters? Do you like that feeling of like physically being suspended sort of
No.
in the air? Um, or is there like a mental thing that it's like,
Yeah.
it's a loss of control, but like a controlled loss of control? I don't know. Something to that.
Yeah, these are really interesting things to think about. Let's just close on this. This is another like tip for play, and this comes from Catherine Price, who has been on this show and is a friend of mine, and wrote a book about play and gave a great TED talk on the subject. And Catherine, has this acronym that stuck out to you: SPARK, SPARK. Can you walk us through it and why why it stuck in your mind?
This is from an episode that was reported by Julia Furlan. She's a journalist here in New York. And I really liked this bit of it. Because I don't know, acronyms, they help you remember stuff. So I love an acronym. The S, so it's SPARK. The S is make space in your life for fun. It's like we fill up our lives with all kinds of things, and some of them aren't actually nurturing us. For me, that's social media is often not nurturing me, and it's taking too much of my time. A lot of the things that go on in my phone, online shopping, and just even activities that feel obligatory but actually aren't. The people that you don't really vibe with that much, but like you keep going to that meetup or you keep hanging out and you're like, actually don't have to do this. I don't have to invest in this connection. I can say no to that to leave space for other things to grow. I think that's really important. And not always rush in to fill the space. Like let it happen. P is for pursuing your passions. So it's like, again, what is that? Look for that common thread that we were talking about, the smell of cut wood in the workshop, that we feeling when you're jumping off the swings, those things that just like for some reason it resonates for you in here. The things you're really passionate about, and you don't have to try to become expert level at them necessarily. Like you're just doing them for the joy of doing them and maintaining that passion. You don't have to monetize them either. The A is attract, for attracting fun. And that's really about developing an attitude that's open to it. And again, I think it's that playful mindset. I try to live in that playful mindset, and one that's very I meet new people. I ask them what they've got going on in their lives. I make connections. I'm trying to learn the drums, but a different kind of drumming. I love bomba music in Puerto Rico. My dad is Puerto Rican. So I just went and saw a group of female bomba drummers, and I say that because traditionally it's the men who play, and the women dance. But yeah, so it was all women playing the drums, and I got the number from a guy there of his daughter who lives in New York and teaches bomba, teaches how to play the drums. So it's like, whatever it is about percussion, I'm really feeling it. It feels right to me. It aligns with some other things that I like. When I show up in that space, I was in had an open attitude, and I was just talking. I talked to this woman who was dancing because I thought she was beautiful and I thought her dance was like really incredible. And then she introduced me to this guy who had the daughter, who teaches the drums. So it just kind of, you got to come at it with like not knowing exactly why you're saying hello to this person or whatever. You just like it. You like what you see. You like what you saw them do. You're curious about them. And then R in the spark is for a little gentle rebellion. So like it's doing something that might feel kind of rebellious, like you'd get in trouble for it if you were in high school. So, like going roller skating in the middle of the night or jumping into the pool with your clothes on or something like that. I know our sleep is very important to us, but like we could spare one night for some shenanigans, some wholesome shenanigans. The K is about keeping at it. And just like, I guess it's like, it's not a job. We don't want to make it into a job, but having fun is something that you should consider a basic human need and work it into your day-to-day life.
Just to pick up on the K, play, you don't want to make it into another thing on your to-do list, but you also don't want your whole life to be your to-do list. And so that's the balance.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I try to leave space now too, especially when I travel, to not really program it. To just be like, yep, I know I'm going to this place. I'm going to stay in this one space and I'm going to bop around. Like, I'm going to go to the beach this day. I'm going to go to the beach that day, because I don't want to have another list of things to do. And it lets me follow the breadcrumbs a little bit.
Yeah. Yes. Marielle, it was a huge pleasure to get some time with you. Just before I let you go, can you remind everybody of the name of your show and where we can find it, how often it comes out, the types of things you covered?
So the show is called Life Kit. It's from NPR. We're a service journalism show, which means we talk to experts and then give you research-backed advice. We do a lot of different kinds of stories on health and money and life skills. So some of my favorite episodes are the ones that could potentially save a life. The ones about breast cancer screening or how to do CPR or how to prevent kids from drowning, like the things you can do ahead of time to make it safer. The money stuff, we love saving people money. How to negotiate down a medical bill, for instance, was a really helpful one, I think. And then we do stuff on life skills like relationships. We're about to do one on how to ask people out in real life. Because everybody's tired of these dating apps. So fun stuff like that. Or even like how to make a turkey for Thanksgiving, things that people can take home and use that day. You can find us across platforms. So the podcast you can hear wherever you get your podcasts, or as Alexi Horowitz-Ghazi said yesterday, wherever the pods are cast. I thought that was cute. He's one of the hosts of Planet Money. We also have a radio show, which you can hear on your local public radio station on the weekends. And we have an Instagram, which we post all kinds of lovely videos on. It's at NPR Life Kit. And then you can go to npr.org/lifekit, and we have written up versions of stories, digital versions that have beautiful art alongside them.
Marielle, thank you very much for doing this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was really fun.